Class, come to order. Do I have to bring in Sister Romilda to put you all in order here? Hey, isn't this a great place to have an event? And I want to thank, here she is, Makiko, who runs this place. They were so, they were beyond generous helping us out planning this event. No charge to us for using the venue. And we hope that all of you have had a chance to look around here. What a beautiful job they did preserving this old Catholic school and turning it into something that's wonderful and attractive to the whole community. And we hope you come back. We hope you become members of Kino Sato. And in a minute, I'm going to bring Makiko up here to say a few words about this place. But we were so appreciative of what she's done. We have a bunch of other sponsors that are in our program. The beer was donated by Peekskill Brewery. I know that. I had a few. They're very good. So if I start to slur my words, you'll understand. Cole's Market was very generous to us. Dylan's Wine Cellar. And in our program, you'll see a number of sponsors, and I should have brought them up here, but I think I can remember most of them. Dane's, one of the oldest businesses in Peekskill, probably the oldest business, continuous existence in Peekskill. Dylan's Wine Cellar, Peekskill Brewery, I think I bet you, oh, thank you, sir. Whew. That's a way to save embarrassment. Gleason's Restaurant, which is another great place to go. Orange Bank and Trust, whose our bankers should be yours. The Marathon Development Group, Home Mason Supply, Peekskill Coffee House, and of course Peekskill Brewery, which I mentioned before. So I want to thank all of them, thank all of you for being here. If you're not a member of the Peekskill Museum, I think we have cards out there where you can sign up and join. If you're not a member of Kino Sato, there are cards out there, right? So they can join here. They have a lot of great events here all the time. And with that, let's see, is there anybody? I want to thank my committee, with all the members of the committee, especially our chairperson, Anita Cream, who put a lot of this together. Will they stand up? We have Joan. We have Joan Robbins, Diane Webster, Dan Grossman, John Curran. I'm missing one person. Who am I missing? Jay Forbes, but I'm missing somebody else. Jay. Who? Robin. Robin Goldstein. I want to thank all of them. And with that, we want to get the program started. It's going to be a great program. You're going to learn a lot about how the Peekskill artist community started, and we got the experts here and the people that were there from the beginning. Oh, I want to acknowledge a couple of people that were here, public officials. As a recovering politician, I know how important it is for them to be recognized. Our Assemblywoman Dana Levenberg was here earlier, had to leave. Kathy Talbert from the City Council, I know, is here. Matt Rubikoff, who is the Economic Development Director for the city, is here, or was here. He's here. Did I miss it? Kathy, is there any other council people here?
Dwight.
Dwight, oh, of course, he's on our program, but Dwight Douglas, yes. So I want to thank them for being here and supporting us. And with that, I'm going to invite a dear friend of mine. She's such a wonderful person. I can't say enough about her. Makiko. Talk about
Thank you so much for coming to Kinoside. I'm so honored to be hosted that I share this beautiful building and then our gallery space with the Peekskill Museum people and then all Peekskill residents and artists and everybody. So yeah, as you know, that this building is a former St. Patrick's School, and then we renovated as much as we can. I want to, leave all the history in this gallery, especially this painting is my late husband, artist Kiko Saito's painting. So then we're going to showing another curations in the galleries too, and then on the second floor, we have another bigger theater space now is showing as a gallery. So after this conference, and you can go up and then see the bigger space on the second floor. And then I'm so happy to know everybody's here, and then please come back with your friend. We have a workshop, and then another new exhibition in the next year, and then kids, the kids workshop too, and the painting class and everything, and then George and Town of Cortland is helping us so much, and then we are so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Makiko. And seriously, think about becoming a member, and certainly come back here for all the different events. You can go to their website. They've been fantastic to us. With this, I'd like to bring up our chairperson of the events committee who put this all together, Anita Cream. Right? You ready? Good. She didn't have as many drinks as me, so it may be more lucid, her comments, than mine. Thank you.
I didn't have any drinks, and I probably should have. So thanks for everybody for coming here tonight. It's so nice to see so many people from the community and a lot of artists that I did know before when I had a business in Peekskill. And it's nice to see you guys all reuniting together. That's kind of a nice warm feeling. So tonight we present the retrospective of the Peekskill Artists District. And the goal of the Peekskill Museum tonight is to document this history about the artist community for the last 40 years. So hopefully by the time the panel finishes discussing and we have questions and answers at the end, you'll have some answers to a couple of questions, such as how did it develop? Where did the idea come from? Who made it work? And what have the artists contributed to the city of Peekskill? And so hopefully by the end of the night, you're going to be able to know those answers. But before we get officially started, somebody's missing who should be in this panel tonight, but she's here with us in spirit. And that would be the mayor of the city of Peekskill from 1995 to 1999, Honorable Frances Gibbs. I have a letter here tonight from the Gibbs family, Barbara Levitz, and I'd just like to take a minute or so just to read that to you. Thank you for the opportunity to submit a quote for the program to the Peekskill Museum's upcoming gala. Although we'll be out of the state on that date and unable to attend, we'll be sending a donation in the memory of our beloved Aunt Fran. And this is what it reads. With great pride, our family and community remember the legacy of Frances Gibbs, who was elected as Peekskill's first woman mayor. Her administration from 1994 to 99 received state, national, and international recognition for its vision, development, and expansion of the Artist District, including the construction of the Artist Lofts, the Westchester Community College Digital Art Center locating in downtown Peekskill. Her leadership in achieving the quality of life and revitalization enhancements also includes Charles Point Pier and Peekskill Landing, and establishing the Peekskill Business Improvement District, which the Business Improvement District and the artists worked very closely. Fran Gibbs played an instrumental role in the development and restoration of the Paramount Center for the Art, served as a long-term active member of the Peekskill Industrial Development Agency, and held many other appointments in service to the city of Peekskill. Sincerely, Barbara Gibbs Levitz. And so the museum thanks the Levitz family for sending us a donation in her honor. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carla Ray Johnson, who is our moderator for the evening, and she came to us from Long Island City as a renowned artist herself when she came, and she chose to make Peekskill her home, and I think we're very lucky to have her with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Welcome, Peekskill lovers, Peekskill Museum lovers, and art lovers. I'm delighted to be the moderator for this distinguished panel and to celebrate the Peekskill Museum and its many years of collecting, archiving, and sharing the history of our city. I'd ask all of you to please, if you haven't already, silence your cell phones so that no one misses a single word. I'm going to introduce each of our panelists separately just before they speak. But first and foremost, I will tell you who I am, or at least what I asked each of the panelists to do was just give me a few sentences that described their role in the beginnings of the Peekskill Artists District. So I'd like to think that I was the first artist to move into a live-work space in downtown Peekskill. Be that as it may, I was certainly one of the first. I moved here in 1992 with my partner, now spouse, Cynthia Knox. We moved into the second floor of 982 Main Street above Rosenblum's. It's now Ofori's, world-class cuisine. We said at the time that we were fulfilling 2 stages of gentrification in one move, I, the artist, and Cynthia, the lawyer. Since those early days, I have watched the city, the artists, and the people of Peekskill fulfill one promise after another to create a thriving artist community and a cultural hub. I am proud to call this city my home. So the first introduction is the number one guy, Ralph DeBart. During the 1990 recession, the city of Peekskill met with Ralph DeBart when it was searching for solutions for a very distressed downtown. The city decided to draw on his experience as a former director of commercial and downtown revitalization for the New York City Department of City Planning, where he worked on redevelopment plans throughout the 5 boroughs, and his knowledge of Peekskill, which was his hometown. During the preliminary exploration process with the city, Ralph drew on 2 additional strengths: his experience as director of the citywide Artist Loft Conversion Unit, again for the New York City Department of City Planning, and his understanding of real estate development through his work as a senior vice president for 2 real estate companies doing conversions and new residential construction in Manhattan and in the Hudson Valley. Ralph DeBart.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you to the Peekskill Museum for organizing this. I just want to say it's very moving for me to be able to return here 30 years later and see a vibrant district still continuing. It was a passionate project, and I very much enjoyed working on it, and I enjoyed meeting and helping to create a community. I'm going to run through very quickly kind of the evolution of the district. In 1990, with the recession, Peekskill was so weak that the recession threatened its actual viability. At that point, over 70%, more than 2/3 of the downtown was vacant. With such a high vacancy rate, building owners had no or limited rental income, and so therefore they couldn't keep up their buildings, and buildings were declining. The deterioration also threatened the city's tax base. The downtown also had no identity. There was no projection as to why people should come downtown. And in that vacuum, this reputation from decades ago as a place of disturbance and civil strife ruled it, and so people felt it was very dangerous. Businesses were failing. When I met with businesses, they told me they were all joking with each other, sadly, that the last one to leave should turn out the lights on the downtown. A lot of the space on the upper floors of the buildings had not been occupied for decades and were in terrible disrepair. So this was the situation that the city of Peekskill confronted. But there was one bright spot in the downtown, and that was the Paramount Center for the Arts. You know, the business reported that at least when the Paramount was operating, there were people on the streets and they had customers and diners. So the Paramount came an idea that perhaps the arts could be an answer to downtown. But the idea was, what could you surround the Paramount with that would make a major impact and help bring people back downtown, repair these buildings, restore the tax base, and most importantly, create a downtown community. During my due diligence, I visited a lot of the vacant spaces, many on the upper floors, and I realized that these spaces reminded me of the lofts I had seen in New York City, the type that artists like for studios and live-work spaces. We decided that we should view the large amount of vacant space not as a negative, but as an opportunity to house artists expanding the downtown's identity and building a very important, intimate community in the downtown. But the big question was, how do you do this? How do you go from a depressed, almost vacant downtown to a vibrant artist district? Here I want to just say that Peekskill is incredibly unique. The most important factor in building the Peekskill Artist District was the full commitment of the mayor, council, and city staff. Anita mentioned, Fran Gibbs. I'd like to also include Ed Gibbs, who worked very closely with her and us on it, and Dwight Douglas, who headed up the staff at City Hall, which really, those are the people who are really responsible for making it happen. When we decided that this might be something we would like to try, I pressed the mayor and I pressed the council and said that if you really want something that's going to be sustaining and you want to create a critical mass in the downtown, you have to commit to this not as a 1 or 2 year initiative, but a multi-year effort so that you can build the downtown and make it self-sustaining. Interestingly, and fortunately, they rose to the challenge, and the district then grew it took almost over a decade to establish a basis and 3 different administrations. Esteemed city planner Chester Rapkin, with whom I had the privilege of working, and who's known as the father of New York City's Soho Art District, stated in a New York Times article that what was so special about Peekskill was the leadership role that the city played in creating your artist district. Other districts such as Soho were first created by artists and later acknowledged, sometimes begrudgingly, by the local government. The city of Peekskill, however, created the artist district virtually from scratch and then worked to attract artists to live in it. There were 4 major steps that were required to create this district. First, under the New York State Building Code, live-work spaces were not even an item. There was no legal way to create them. And the zoning in the downtown precluded live-work loss, which didn't exist, but also residential use. Again, the city making this together with City Hall staff a priority, within 3 months changed the zoning of the downtown to create the opportunity for live-work lofts and negotiated with the New York State Buildings Department to create a mixture of a commercial and residential unit known as a live-work loft. And now, since then, many, many other communities throughout the state have taken advantage of that. And that was thanks to Brian Havernack and the Buildings Department. So this is a sort of determination which makes the Peekskill Artist District totally unique. The second thing was, the city, especially with a declining tax base since the downtown was disappearing, didn't have a lot of money. And in order to launch this, they needed to have a public relations campaign. So they had to figure out, how do we get free publicity? So we got together and we thought of different things that we can do that would dare or attract the press. For example, to garner initial press attention and therefore free advertising, the city held a press conference publicly announcing that they were creating an artist district and made the very bold public proclamation that they would have 20 artists downtown in 6 months. The press loved this, and they all wrote in their calendar, come back in 6 months to see if they succeed. Most likely they're going to fail, and we'll have some fun stories to write about. So that put us on the map with the press. And this type of intuitive and innovative craftsmanship kept getting media attention. We were, as you saw in the presentations, in the New York Times many, many times, and we even went international with media. The second thing was we had to create a real estate development strategy. Again, how could we get property owners to rehabilitate their deteriorated vacant space in order to be able to rent it? When we met with them, they all said, "You're crazy. It would be throwing good money after bad money with no hope of possible return." They were not going to do this alone. Again, the city, again being creative, and since this was their priority, met with property owners, many with the open floor units that had not been inhabited again for decades. I remember even one unit, you had to climb a ladder to get up to the upper floors. That's how deteriorated those spaces were. And the city said, "We'll work with you. We'll help identify artists who will come here, meet with you, sign a lease. And based on that lease, you will have an income at the end of the process in order to be able to make this a successful economic project." So, plus, the guarantee of the tenant at the income of the end was still a difficult sell. But we had a couple of adventuresome property owners who were willing to try it. Again, the city did not have money to spend on this, but they did have a loan program. And so they adapted the loan program to help provide building owners with mortgage financing to be able to do these renovations and get the whole project underway. In addition, the building department and Dwight would work with them so that property owners who are not developers, this was going to be something that they would have to do on their own, could understand what the code required, to understand what they had to do to get a legal C of O for the live-work loft, and they held their hands throughout the same process, through the entire process, so the building owners knew at the end of the time they would have a legal loft, they would have tenant, the tenant would be willing to pay rent, and therefore they would have a successful renovation of their building. This removed a lot of risk, and owners began to sign on. For buildings that could not house a residential, meaning live-work loft, we worked with them to create artist studios. So every building in the downtown was going to be able to have either a live-work loft or artist studios. But then came, how do we get these artists here? So we needed artists that were willing to move to Peekskill in the downtown. We marketed the district to artists through every successful press campaign that we had started. We also placed inexpensive ads in places like the Village Voice that artists read. And we also worked with local artists, such as some that we have here tonight, to network with their friends who were not in Peekskill to see whether they would be willing to move to Peekskill. So we offer the artists legal live-work lofts with leases that were long because many of them were concerned they're picking up roots and moving to a new community, and they did not want to have to be forced to move in a few years. So we told them that we would work to get them leases of 5 and 10 years. Of course, the property owners also loved this because it meant they had an income stream for 5 or 10 years. So it was a perfect marriage. And we also worked because we realized, as we began to talk with artists, that a live-work space was important. To be able to have a long-term lease was important. But what most artists, like most people, thrived was a community. And so creating a community became a major component of this program. We worked hard to create get-togethers at local restaurants. The artists began to create festivals, they began to have events, and they began to build their community. I remember when I really realized this was when one of the first artists moving in came to me. She said, "This is great." I said, "I'm so glad you like your loft." And she said, "No, you don't realize. We're always isolated. I could walk out now, meet another artist, and say, I'm applying for a grant. Do you think I should put this artwork in it or that artwork in it?" She said, "We have here a community." So community, again, is the overriding benefit of the downtown. Now, why did it take a decade to do this. And again, you have to remember, 3 administrations, that this had to constantly be a priority of city government and city staff. Building these artist-landlord partnerships occurred on a one-by-one basis. You had to meet with the landlord, you had to convince them to do this, you had to have the building department come in, you had to work with the city in terms of mortgage financing, you had to hold their hands through the construction, until finally in the end they were able to have the artists enter. So that's not an overnight thing. So each one of these was a project into itself. And fortunately, the pioneering landlords benefited, and they were happy with it, so word spread, and eventually it became easier and easier to recruit artists who wanted to participate in the program. And as the artists moved in, and they realized that this was actually going to be a real artist community, it was going to have longevity, and it was going to be a success, they began also calling around, speaking to people, and began calling us looking for spaces. This resulted in most of the space in the downtown being tenanted. If I remember correctly, Dwight, you might know better, this resulted, when I was here, more than 150 live-work lofts in this tiny downtown, and over 50 studios were created. A critical mass was a critical issue to ensure that the district would remain viable for the future. And this fact and this goal has been achieved looking at all of you here today, because the Artist District is still very real and very much a part of Peekskill. And then I'll quickly go through other benefits, and we could talk about this later. The artists opened galleries and businesses. Artists created public events and festivals, attracting people, which in turn helped attract new restaurants and businesses. Artists worked to supplement the school system arts program, something that many may not know, but they volunteered, and that was a point when the arts were disappearing from public schools. The Westchester Arts Workshop in Westchester Community College. The community college meaning that kids who could not afford to commute would be able to start their college education in their downtown, came to Peekskill because of the artists. Housing values within walking distance of the downtown, and we did a survey, and those housing units were typically 25 to 30% less than other housing units out further from the downtown. Began to improve as artists began to decide to make a permanent home and buy them, fix them up, and live here. The Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Arts was established in Peekskill because they were attracted by the Artist District. And it fostered new developments such as the Art Lofts and the Lofts on Main. And one of the fun things that we did was we created a sister artist district in Kyoto, Network Neishishin. And that was also, and we were invited to meet with the mayor there, because when those artists found out that the city government started this artist district, and they were struggling like many communities to establish by themselves an artist district, they wanted us to talk to their mayor so that their government could see the light and do the same. So I congratulate the city of Peekskill, the staff that worked here, and everybody in the downtown who supported this dream, and it's now a dream that came true.
Wow, I get goosebumps just listening to that, and I was here. Just want to mention a couple of things. I've run into artists from other river towns that have artists living there, like Beacon and Ossining, and I've heard, word on the street is that, well, Peekskill has a real artist community. We're kind of fractured, but Peekskill has an artist community, and I think that is dead to rights. I think that's true. I also was thinking about, as Ralph was talking, thinking about the space that we moved into on Main Street that had a Moose Lodge sign over the doorway, which we of course left. And the story was that it had sat empty, the space had sat empty for quite a few years, but the only resident for a few months had been the monkey lady. And the monkey lady had like rhesus monkeys or something that ran around. So this is what we, this was Peekskill. Okay, so it is my delight to introduce Dwight Douglas. And I'm going to introduce him in his own words, because they're pretty moving. He said, regarding the beginnings of the Artist District, we all put our hearts and souls into making it a success. This includes some of my staff at the planning department and many artists, and of course Ralph. This was Ralph's baby, the essential person to the whole success story. From 1991 until I left in 1998, the Artist District was the single most important project to me as Peekskill, an older and post-industrial city in northern Westchester, became Peekskill, home of the Artist District. Peekskill was experiencing a wave of development in the mid-1990s. Forest View, Society Hill 2, Chapel Hill, Charles Point Industrial Park. But I'm pretty sure I spent more than half of my time on the Artist District. I hope to share some of the internal City Hall elements, the backstory, that took place behind the scenes and cover some of the more complicated, larger projects that were involved. Dwight Douglas.
Let's see if this is working. I guess it is. I wanted to back up a little bit before Ralph came to save the day, as the saying goes. Peekskill, when we moved in, my wife and I, in 1967, Peekskill did have a downtown. It had several supermarkets. It had department stores. But the seeds of its failure were sown already in the Beach Shopping Center, where Sears had moved out of the downtown and a big supermarket had come in. I did not see much of the downtown until I got hired in 1977 to run some housing programs and to clean up what was left over from the urban renewal process. They come to a dead stop in 1976. There was change of administration, and there was a lot of pieces of work that needed to be done to wrap up projects that had been going on. In 1984, I got hired as the deputy director of the department, and here's some different things to know, I think. From 1984 to 86, Peekskill was the fastest growing small city in the state. What had happened was all of the institutional lands that ring the downtown, owned by churches, had all closed. And the zoning was changed to permit aggressive development, and all of that land got under development. And that's why we were called the fastest growing and small city in the state. 1,500 units, new units of housing were being built in this period. We also had Charles Point. We'd taken over the property, 45 acres, marketed it, and we're redeveloping it starting into the mid-1985. We then moved, the housing was going on till the recession of 1987, and things slowed down in 88, 89. And when we brought Ralph on in 1990, there was a lot of time in my department to do work with Ralph on it because the slowdown in the development of the housing and at Charles Point had occurred. In 1988, I got hired as the director and was the director for 10 years, working closely with Ralph and on other projects. My colleague, Deborah Post, I was hoping would be here tonight. I didn't see her, but I hired her, the city hired her as my deputy, and I gave her all the most difficult projects immediately. She's much smarter than me in the first place. That cleared room for me to do the stuff that I like to do, which was running a whole bunch of housing projects and working with the Architecture Review Board. I see Howard here from that, and Kay with Bob Barthelmess was part of that. So we brought in something that urban renewal mixed out on, in that we brought design focus into the downtown. I think from that point with the Architecture Review Board, which was Fran Gibbs' baby, I think the development in Peekskill would always have better eye view of what the how it should fit in and what the character. And we created a design district for the downtown and started to do facade improvements and stuff. All of this leading up to when Ralph got brought on board to help start this. And the Artist District is his baby. The downtown was hurting at this point. We had the Paramount Center in 1982, 45 properties were just handed over to the city. People just walked away from them, including 6 buildings in the downtown. The condition that Ralph describes for the downtown, now parts of the outskirts were doing fairly well in growth mode, but the downtown was hurting. the 6 buildings in the downtown, we decided that 2 of them had to be restaurants. So that made us take a less price for the sale of them. And we brought in Susan's Restaurant and Jasmine's Restaurant. Those were heavily financed to come in. And we had sit-down restaurants for people going to the Paramount or coming in the evening. The vacancy rate that Ralph talked about was, I didn't realize was 70%, but I believe it now that it's come out, because meanwhile, all of our department stores were closing down. Woolworths and Janung's, which went then Steinbach's and McCrory's were closing down, creating a lot of vacancy and lack of foot traffic. In the adoption of the zoning ordinance, which I drafted up for the Live Workspace, the council adopted it 7-0. But their view really was more like this: well, what have we got to lose? Nothing is working anyway. So Team Ralph was formed. It included me, Mayor Gibbs, who she was deputy mayor before mayor, so that goes beyond those 1994 years back into the heart of this whole thing. Fran would meet practically every artist. At some point, you had the mayor or the deputy mayor at your beck and call when you were moving into Peekskill, and she had the heart for that. The building inspector was a big part of the team also, because these were not easy things to determine. So I wanted to focus on one other aspect that Ralph, I don't know, we actually did have money. When the urban renewal project ended, we had been making these loans for residential and commercial development. And we used a new program called the Urban Development Action Grant Program to make loans to business. We got the grant, and we turned them into loans, and those loans were repaid. And there was actually a couple $1 million available to help with the Artist District and non-tax dollars. And actually, an important component of this, you had all this vacant space, and sometimes some small loans from that fund was what was needed to move them, the owner, into this. That's part of the stuff that we did in support of Ralph's initiative. I wanted to focus on 5 larger projects, the 3 vacant in 1990, 3 vacant department stores, the Evening Star building, which had also closed down, and the remaining urban renewal lot on Central Avenue. The first of these was the easiest one for me. It's the Woolworths building. It had a need to be redeveloped and no use for it at the time. And Ralph had took me out to meet with the Westchester Art Workshop folks who had a facility in the county center. And I think it was Wayne Cartzell, does that ring a bell? Wayne got interested and said, yeah, we could do this in the digital art thing. So we had, at the grassroots level, interest from Westchester Community College, which oversees the Westchester Art Workshop. So what do we need? We needed a space that would fit what was envisioned for that. So I met with the owner of the property and negotiated over several times to come up with a low per square foot rent of $5 per square foot. With that, which was good low price for that time. It was triple net lease, but $5, if you can imagine numbers like that now, which was like, well, forget about that. But anyway, so Al Weissman agreed to that, and we shook on it. We didn't have anything written down, but with that piece of information, I was pretty much just a cheerleader after that, because everything went up the ladder. The county executive, the Westchester Community College president, our mayor, the county everybody that was anybody got involved in negotiating the terms to move that in. I don't know if you were involved at those levels. I certainly wasn't.
I have a story I'll tell later.
Okay, good. So I didn't see it until finally it got approved, and we did the work to make sure that the building was renovated and the Westchester Art Workshop moved in. The other 2 department stories, I wanted to share a cartoon that my mentor, Ed Shorno, had posted in the planning department. It had 2 buzzards sitting on a branch. It was empty of leaves. And one of the buzzards says to the other, forget about waiting around for somebody to die. Let's go kill something. So that idea was the other 2 department stores, which we were to go out and buy both of them. No waiting around for something good to happen. Take direct action. The first of those was McCrory's, and there was a funny meeting with the owner's representative. I have to share these little stupid stories, but anyway, so we go walk through the building, and it's pretty obvious that there's asbestos. The plumbers have done some amazing damage to the upstairs bathroom, and they've cut all the joists so that they could get the pipe in easily, and the bathroom on the second floor was beginning to tilt down into the first floor. And then they had decided to save some money and had a billboard put on, which wasn't that great, but the billboard was connected to the parapet and to the roof, and it damaged both of them severely. So there was a lot of, anyway, so we negotiated, and the owner's representative comment about asbestos stuck in my mind. He said, you know, I'd eat that stuff for breakfast. So I'm sorry, it's just the kind of thing, those are the things you remember sometimes. Anyways, so we settled on that. We cleaned the asbestos. We've corrected the plumbing errors. We got the bulletin board out of there, billboard out of there. And then we renovated the upper floor, and Ralph brought 16 artists into studios that are still there. I think we asked about it one time. I think 15 were clearly still there. One was, I'm not sure if I qualify that as an artist studio, but anyway. Then we started working on the rest of the building. There's a nice restaurant there now. That happened after I left. We brought in Ford Piano. That's out of there now, but there's some very interesting, Kathy could share some of the thoughts about that other part of the building and possible potential future stuff for there. Kathy's been working with the Paramount. The other department store, Janung's and Steinbeck, had the problem of Steinbeck had closed and had no intention of opening, but had still 11 years more on the lease. And the lease was a low payment for them. So the struggle there, and it took some time, was to negotiate a buyout of their lease and get the owner to accept that plus a chunk of change from the city to sell it to the city. So before we did that, we laid out the artist lofts and studios that would go in there. And we closed on the property. We bought the property. It turned out later that we found a better option for the use of that, and the state brought in the workers' comp on a 10-year lease. So that we're back to where we were, another vacant building back where it was. But I thought the buzzard concept is still there, I think, for the city. We will take action, but we will just not wait. So. Then the Evening Star building, I was hoping Deborah would be here to talk about it. I won't say anything more than she somehow got Housing and Urban Development to agree to take a $90,000 grant and divert it from where it was supposed to go to help with the Evening Star renovations. And then Ralph brought about 5 live-work lofts in there and some studio stuff. And then the Central Avenue lot has 28 artists' lofts. We got a $2.3 million state grant. And then we began to work on the architecture. I'm proud of it, but I think we missed some things. I mean, if I had a regret, it would be that the architecture is okay, as opposed to what I would say really interesting. And so with that, I did want to. Ralph's the one that comes up with crazy ideas, like we're going to have 20 artists in 6 months. Nobody else would be brave or foolish enough to say that, but have the talent and skill to actually pull that off. So that separates Ralph from a lot of us people that do a lot of good work for government and for development projects, but I can certainly say it separated me. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Dwight. Our next panelist probably needs no introduction because most people know him, but in 1991, Larry D'Amico and his artist partner, Sohn Tower, bought a city-owned 1845 Greek Revival church, which happened to have been the old field library, in downtown Peekskill, in need of a lot of TLC. The massive commitment to rehabbing the building into studio and living space turned into a commitment to the city itself. Larry has served and is serving on a number of city boards. He was on the original Peekskill Business Improvement District Board when it was founded in 1996. Through that, he organized a committee of artists to create the first Open Studios event in 1997. This event continues bringing thousands of people to downtown Peekskill over the years. Larry and Sohn did 4 collaborative community mural projects from 2000 to 2015 in the downtown area. Larry is one of the prime movers for a state-funded public art program that is a collaboration between the Hudson Valley MoCA, the Peekskill Arts, and the Peekskill Arts Alliance. Installations have already begun and will continue to roll out this fall. So things are still happening and moving and getting greater and greater in Peekskill. Larry.
Thank you, Carla Ray. So, I'm going to try and cover 30 years in 15 or 10 minutes, whatever. So, when we moved into our building, it was a total wreck. Like a lot of the buildings being described, the place was like, when it rained outside, it rained inside. But it had these 4.5 by 15 foot high windows, and I looked at that and said, this is a great studio. So we were off. Fortunately, there was a lot of support from the city for the project, and the building inspector came in and worked with us to say, yeah, that's something you can do. Maybe you need to think about that a little bit more. And it was very, very helpful. We also took one of the low interest loans to help defray some of the costs. It took about a year and a half, 2 years to really pull the place together. So we actually physically moved in the winter of '93. At that point, Peekskill was still pretty raw. You know, basically through the '90s, on the weekends, there would be tumbleweeds rolling down the street. There was nothing going on. There was some life in a few of the restaurants, but it really hadn't turned the corner yet. So one of the things that was really obvious was that we needed to do something to actually have the artists get some public notice. So when I joined the bid, one of the first things that we decided to do was do the open studios. And fortunately, there were a number of artists, Joanne Brody and several others who stood up and helped organize and push it forward. And the first open studios, I believe we got a good couple of thousand people out. Because of all the New York Times buzz about the town, people turned out. And that has continued. Basically, at that time, we were it was bid money that helped us to actually do this thing. The Peekskill Arts Council also stepped. Well, I stepped into the presidency of that, which was crazy. But we had some good people on the board at the time, and managed to keep the open studios thing going, and yearly we continued to have people come in. The biggest thing that I think I have seen over the 30 years is artists come in, and many of them rent spaces, and they stay for a while and they move on. Many others come in, rent spaces, and then buy homes and have moved in and are really part of the community and are participating. There were a few pioneers like Howard Goodman and Lisa Bresnak, And actually Joanne Brody was there before this all happened. But then there's also Bob Barthelmess and the family, and they were really solid supporters of the situation. So we have developed, and the Peekskill Arts Council evolved into the Peekskill Arts Alliance. We now have a great president of the Arts Alliance, Robin Klein, who's back there. And we have a good, solid board of artists on the board that are really, it's very satisfying to me because I'm seeing a vision, that is being fulfilled by these people. And I feel like I'm not important anymore to this, which is great, as far as I'm concerned. The other piece of the picture here is this is a working artist district. It isn't like other places where there's a bunch of galleries and people doing their work and showing in the galleries and things like that. So you really don't see a lot of the artists' work, aside from during open studios. So one of the things that I really wanted to see happen is that we get public art out there. And my partner and I did the best we could. We did 4 projects. I'm done doing projects. It's now time for other artists to come in and really get this thing going. So we, through the Peekskill Arts Alliance and through HV MoCA, have gotten money through the DRI funds for a fairly decent public art project, which is starting to roll out now. And by the fall, we should see a major change taking place. We now have the designs for several of the projects already in place. We need to go before the Common Council and let other people see them, but we're really ready to roll at this stage. It's taken a lot of work, like 3.5 years to get to this point. But once we get going, this is going to happen fast. So we're in an exciting place as far as I'm concerned. And I think at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to all of you. If you got any questions, ask away.
Thank you, Larry. I also want to make a note of a couple of other things that have sort of put us forward. One is the series of Peekskill projects that has been sponsored by the Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art, which is now Hudson Valley MoCA. Those brought lots and lots of people, just as the open studios do. And then the Bean Runner Cafe, it stopped with COVID, but we had First Monday salons. I was the host for them for 10 years from 2010 to 2020 when COVID canceled our very last one. And I had ordered a cake because it was our 10-year anniversary. So we're going to celebrate it, and we don't know when the next salon will be, but when we're pretty sure it's safe to do so, we're going to have one. And it's safe now, but I think March. Okay. Okay, so for the question and answer portion of this panel, we've been given about 15 minutes. I will ask that everyone be as brief and concise as possible with your questions and remarks, because I'm sure there are a lot of people and there may be a lot of questions. We want to give everyone a chance. I will bring the microphone around to members of the audience who would like to participate. Please use the mic. Please use the mic, even though you have a teacher voice. There will be somebody in the back of the room who's too shy to say, I just can't hear you. So Do use the mic. Don't hold it down here because it doesn't work. And don't hold it here. Hold it a little distance from your mouth and keep it that way so everyone can hear you. Also, please address your questions to a particular person from the panel you wish to hear from, or to the whole panel if you want more than one answer. All right, do we have some questions? There was a question here.
Congratulations. It's rare to hear success stories like these days. And I'm from Croton. I'm so happy for Peekskill. It sounds like a bunch of very wise and humble people working together and supporting and appreciating each other to make this happen. I live in Croton, and we have a certain complacency that prevents progress, but I don't hear that here. So great. I'm very happy to attend tonight's talk.
And you are?
Eleanor from Croton.
Eleanor from Croton. You have a question, comment over here?
So I was here before the Peekskill.
Joanne Brody.
Joanne Brody, for those of you who don't know me. I moved my office here in 1985, during the worst of it, to one of those vacant third floors. We ran a business. It was not an art thing. I heard about Ralph and I said, that's crazy. But I jumped aboard. I was, at that point, a potter working in clay. It was the community that started up. It was the three organizations that Ralph helped to develop. The Valley Artists, that music thing, and the theater arts group that made the huge difference, that made a community, and it put all these people with somewhat more experience who were so giving and so generous, and they took me from this level of a potter to a sculptor. And I could go on. Dina Burston hooked me up with Young Audiences New York. Carla Ray had all the workshops at the beginning where we did slides, and everyone used Howard Goodman for slides, and I learned something very important then. And I'm going to stop now, but it's really the community that made the huge difference for us as artists.
I also want to mention that it was Linda Jean Fisher who got me to come to Peekskill. We were in a workshop together, and she kept bringing articles from the New York Times and saying, look, here's another one. Linda Jean also asked me to specifically thank Ralph DeBart for encouraging her to get a studio in the Flatiron Building. She said, it changed my life. Questions? Yay, Linda Jean. Additional comments, questions? Yes.
I don't have a question, but I'm relatively new to the Peekskill community. I would say 5 years in December. And I am very impressed with all the initiatives that have come and continue to come. And one of the things that I really have to commend Robin for is through the pandemic, having virtual studio visits, for example, which was another way to keep the community together and share, especially being a newcomer, to get to meet who the other artists were in the community. And most recently at MoCA, there's just started an art club again, which is starting I believe next Monday. And people are invited to come once a month and do critiques and meet together as a group and talk about art. And I am thrilled that these opportunities are coming about. So thank you. And you are?
Felice Gittleman.
Felice Gittleman.
My question is for Carla Ray. I don't know if you remember, but I had read in the Times many, many moons ago that Peekskill was a startup community And I remember that Larry was in the same article in the Times. I believe it was in I'm not sure, but early. At any rate, I went to see you at the Westchester Arts Workshop. I had already taken a class with you, and you said, come up in response to what is it like in Peekskill. And I stayed for 26 years, and it was a real community, and I am so delighted to see so many of my old friends here.
Berenice Pliskin. I forgot about that. I was responsible for that, right? Awesome. Joseph Squilante.
Thank you, Carla Ray, and thank all of you tonight for being here. It's been a privilege to be a resident here in Peekskill. When my wife and I moved here in 2006, we were immediately embraced by the arts community because of the work that we do personally. But I am still concerned about Main Street, and I think that from my perspective, from what I know, I think Main Streets all over the country suffer because of, first of all, the mauling of America, and then now online shopping. And I'm wondering what you, from your perspective and with all your insight, would it take to make a real vital Main Street here in Peekskill?
Is this for the whole panel? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to pass on that one right
Ralph passes.
Well, the direction we've been going toward arts, toward entertainment, toward restaurants, there's a major initiative that maybe Kathy, I don't know if we're ready to speak about it yet, but it's in the development stage to vastly expand the capacity of fewer seats, but the capacity of the Paramount Center to do different things and tie it back into the other. So I do think, I don't really believe that retail is coming back in any strong form. I think it's going to be I think the pandemic took a little of the starch out of us. And if we get that back, it's a nightlife place, and it can have office support during the day. There's types of stuff like that. But I think it's a good vision for this. It's workable. It's potential. It can be done. It's important that the art, maybe give Ralph a little, it's important that the arts stay a major focus for it, because it gives an identity to the city. Without it, we're like anyone else. But I don't know. In terms of the arts, are there ideas you have and things that, if you were still running the show here, what else would you be thinking about doing? It's a tricky question.
No, I think Dwight is correct. One can't look at brick and mortar retail as the salvation anymore. But I think the energy and the dynamicness of the district will continually bring in new life and new people. I drove around the downtown, and there seems to be very, very vibrant compared to many downtowns that I see. So I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think the artists are very creative, as they have been, and they've kind of multiplied ideas, multiplied juices, and have opened up businesses themselves. But to have a strong art center, to have the open studios, to have a strong restaurant base, to have a strong service base, and to have, like, Fern, her store is there. So still have a lot of art businesses is very important. And you're really ahead of most small communities these days.
So it's naive to expect that Main Street today could possibly be Main Street of yesterday. It's not going to happen.
I don't see it as happening now. No. I mean, between the cost of brick and mortar and between things like Amazon, the traditional retail base has disappeared. So it has to be unique in different things. And, after 30 years of the artist district, you have a strong base that you can continue to work and build on.
So unique businesses are what we should expect to
Yes.
come in.
Mm-hmm. And just for example, for a while there was Azimuth Media, they were cutting-edge technology, they came in. You know, as engineering companies came in. You know, so you have businesses that aren't related or attracted by the arts that really are an economic foundation. And you know, they constantly are interested because of the creative base that's here.
I knew we would get Kathy Talbot to talk. Kathy Talbot.
Main Street. A lot of stuff is happening on Main Street. One of the things that, a couple of things that I want to mention, the art lofts on Main, first of all, they're highly successful, but they had commercial space below. And businesses like the Blondery set up shop there. She was on one of the morning shows, Channel 7. She's been in the paper, you know, in the Times and things like that. She has a fabulous business. So it's like these niche kind of businesses are coming in. One of the things that I'm really pushing for, as is Dwight, I think, and the rest of us, is to get some of the truck traffic diverted off of Main Street. That would be, you know, it's a tough town because it's Route 6 and, you know, they're all coming in from the shopping centers and to go on to Route 9. And, you know, so whether we've made progress, that's a hard road to hoe, but we have made progress on that. And we recently opened did a ribbon cutting for a beautiful combination affordable housing unit that is so fantastic and beautiful right on Main Street, right past the Kiley Center. And it has all different, it's like a real model because it has all different levels of income, you know, from 40% of the AMI to 60, 80, and 100%. And it's broken up into all of those things. And you've got all new people coming in. So that's going to be wonderful, and you're going to have a lot more traffic on Main Street. But I think the big thing there on Main Street is the getting more niche businesses like the Blondery, and then there's the Lounge next door, which I thought was a place to hang out, and it turns out it's a great clothing store. And, you know, with lounge clothes. So, you know, things like that I think would really help. And we do have marijuana dispensary coming for those that are interested in that kind of thing. Whole nother crowd. Okay.
We have time for one short question answer. And here you go. Please tell us who you are.
My name is Barbara Denoya. My husband actually had a business, my late husband, on Main Street. It was a investment, tax, and insurance business, ITI Strategies, Lawrence Denoya. And it doesn't have anything to do with being an artist, financial planning and whatever, but I feel that the Rotary, the Peekskill Rotary, and the Chamber of Commerce, where all these people kind of came together, really helped also because they would push the Paramount with the arts, making people come downtown, people coming in with money to invest. I felt that all the people, even if they weren't art people, kind of helped that whole area. He had a lot of struggles because, like you're saying, water in the building, craziness going on, but it is a beautiful building, and they tried to keep it that way by having, you had to paint certain colors, you know, to keep it that way. And it was a good place for business, and it's still running. So, you know, I think that all of you did a wonderful job on that, so thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to mention Howard Goodman and Lisa Bresnik and certainly Joanne Brody for being the real pioneers, because they were here in the mid-'80s. And so they laid the groundwork for us all coming in. So thank you to them. All right, we'll let you pull rank Ramon Fernandez on the city council.
Thank you. I just want to add something that Kathy mentioned about Main Street also, like, and even Larry D'Amico is working with the DRI project on Puglis Bar, and they're going to be a lot of hours to be showing over there. And for the DRI project, also the bakery next to the health center. It was Los Andes, now it's Dulce, I forgot the name, but they're gonna have an outdoor, like a dining or coffee shop over there in the sidewall expanded. If I'm not wrong, there's a project now in the planning commission right in the corner, across the street from the Dunkin' Donut. I think it's like an empty parking lot, like they're gonna be a mixed building with some store and an apartment. And Chuck, he was here, he gonna have something on Howard Street and North Broad Street with a walkable pathway between the historical house to that you can go to the Howard Street side. So it is a couple things running in Main Street, and I think with the Kathy mentioned with his idea, his project to take out the heavy traffic from Main Street is gonna be very interesting to see that. And there are more, but it would take it too long to say something. Thank you.
Thank you. So your dream is coming true, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Colorado.
A big thanks to Kino Seto, a thank you to the Peekskill Museum, and to all of you artists and art lovers and museum lovers who came out tonight. Thank you very much.